Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session titled MIT's Transition to Remote Learning, which is part of JWell Connections designed for senior university leadership with the theme Reimagining Curriculum. My name is Kirky DeLong, and I will be moderating today's session. So without further delay, I warmly welcome our speaker, Dean for Digital Learning, Krishna Rajagopal. Welcome.
Thank you, Kirky. Hello, everyone. This is indeed Krishna Rajagopal. So long ago, in the BC era, before COVID, when we planned this, I was going to speak about reimagining curriculum in the context of things that the MIT Physics Department has done over the past 20 years, actually. How we've made the learning experience of our students more active in a whole variety of ways, and how in the most recent 6 or 7 of those 20, how we've used digital learning to help doing so. I was going to speak about blending digital learning with in-person classroom learning on a campus like MIT's. That doesn't seem like the right use of all of our time today. And so we decided that I would really speak briefly, and then we do a Q&A about how we at MIT and how all of you in your institutions, as you wish to share, as you ask questions, are transitioning to remote learning as forced upon us by this global pandemic. So I have no slides, and in fact, I didn't do any preparation. I'm just going to speak extemporaneously. Let me tell you what my role has been. So here at MIT, we started to realize that we needed to plan for something that was coming right around the very early days of March, roughly a month ago. And a group of us started thinking about this, and by around March 7th, 8th, in that range, we had an academic continuity group that Ian Waits, the vice chancellor, led, and with that has many parts. And there's also a business continuity group and a research continuity groups, and there's a medical continuity group, student life continuity group. So there are many parts to MIT's response. My responsibility in this effort has been to help prepare and support 1,000 professors at MIT as they change from teaching in the way they are used to teaching our students remotely. We had about, as it turned out, from when we started until our first day of remote teaching, we had about 3 weeks to prepare. We are, since this past Monday, so our first day of remote teaching was the Monday of this week, Monday, March 30th, teaching 1,251 classes to our students who are remote now. Even those who remain in Cambridge, Massachusetts are, of course, doing all their learning from the space in which they live. Most of our faculty are teaching from home. So a big part of this experience is actually coming into each other's daily lives. You are seeing me. I deliberately didn't put a background behind myself. You're seeing me sitting in my bedroom. And students are seeing faculty, and faculty are seeing students in their daily lives. They're seeing pets, they're seeing kids, they're seeing diaper changes, because all of us are at home. And many of us have, from the faculty side, many of us have partners or kids or family members whom we're caring for, and all of that has become part of the teaching experience and the learning experience. The analog for students, Kirky, if you could, I sent various things around for people to read before today. One thing you could add, there is a really wonderful blog post on the MIT admissions site from a student named Abby H. Public post with the student's last name is not posted, about her experience as a student.
I'll post it.
And that's worth sharing also, to give the student side of it from one student who shared her experience publicly. So we have, I don't know what the right metaphor is, but MIT is an institution with a lot of inertia, and we've changed its direction from this to this in, well, from my perspective, 3 weeks, for most faculty 2 weeks, because most faculty only realized that we would have to do this with about 2 weeks notice. How are we doing? I would say two things. And one is that we as an institution and as a community are very proud of the extraordinary efforts that many, many people, I could tell you about what our IS&T department, our IT department has done, what the people whom I work with on a daily basis, like Cheryl Barnes, have done in preparing people from a pedagogical perspective, Janet Rankin in Teaching and Learning Lab, what Sloan has done. I can talk a lot about the amazing things that many, many people have done. There are many things that would normally take 6 months that have been done in 1 week. And we within MIT are very proud of what so many faculty have done as they've prepared to teach in a new way with 2 weeks notice. It's a thing that we can take great pride in, and we do. At the same time, nobody should think that we're doing a good job of this. We're not teaching remotely in the way that someone who has spent a couple of years thinking about how to blend digital learning tools into an education would be able to do. You know, to really do this well, which was the original subject of today's panel, would to really, in a really good way, take advantage of digital tools to teach as well as we know how it can be done online, takes much more preparation and development of materials and thought than anyone could do in 2 weeks. So there's a small fraction of the faculty who probably are doing a really good job because they've already been thinking about this for a number of years. But for most of us, most of my community of 1,000 faculty, they're doing something that they had no idea they were going to be doing until 2 weeks before they started. And so, you know, we will need to learn from what we're doing and do things better. And if we have to do this beyond this semester, there will be a lot of opportunity for those who have experience, including people who connect with the Office of Open Learning in a variety of ways, to help those who have just been thrown into this with 2 weeks preparation do better if we have to do this further. But for right now, nobody should think that we're doing this in the way that we know, in the best ways that we know how. We're doing this in the best ways that we know how with 1,000 faculty who at the same time as they were preparing for teaching, were figuring out how to take care of their families. We're figuring out how to do grocery shopping. We're figuring out all aspects of life in a pandemic. And at the same time as that, they were shutting down research labs, closing down activities on campus. So subject to all those constraints, I think we're doing amazing. But for those of you who have expertise in online learning, you should realize that, you know, many of my colleagues are just teaching via Zoom. They're talking with their students like I'm talking with you. And I'm about to flip to Q&A because you shouldn't do what I'm doing for an hour, right? That's bad practice because everyone, you are all losing your, not paying attention anymore. So I have to stop and take questions. In just a second, Kirky. We have, I think the better ways of doing this involve an integration of asynchronous and synchronous modes of delivery. They involve segmented videos interspersed with active questions in which a student takes an active role. But for right now, if you want, I'll end with one extraordinary statistic. Actually, I'll give you two. First of all, we set up a 24/7 support line for teachers. So it's a MIT teacher can phone this phone number and get help from someone in our IS&T office 24 hours of the day. On the first day of remote teaching, only 11 people called that out of the 1,000 faculty, plus all the instructors, all the TAs. So that to me is an enormous credit to the work that many of the people that I led did, and to the faculty of MIT for actually having got ready. So things are working in that sense. But then here's another statistic. On that first day, we had 1.3 million minutes of Zoom meetings. On a typical Monday at MIT, we have about 30,000 minutes of Zoom meetings, and we had 1.3 million. Zoom meetings like this are a good way of doing office hours. They're a really good way of doing small group discussions. They're not the best way of teaching 50 students. And so this is where we are. We're moving forward. I'm very proud of what many, many people at MIT have done. But there are a lot of interesting questions that this raises, both about how we're doing what we're doing now and about what the future may hold. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm happy to turn to questions. I'm scanning the chat. I don't think I'm able to read every single post. Kirky, how should we proceed with Q&A?
Would you like me just to ask some questions?
Sure. Actually, you know what? I'm going to answer some of them myself. So Añaldo Arroyo has asked about students with difficulty accessing internet and equipment. So I'll tell you what we're doing. And, this is something that MIT can do. I don't mean this as a prescription. We reached out to all of our students and asked them about their internet access and their bandwidth. Most very, very large fraction of MIT students have a laptop, very large fraction. In the very few cases where that was not so, MIT mailed laptops to its students. Very few cases, but MIT did that. There are many more students, still a small fraction, but many more in total who have poor bandwidth. They've gone home and they're in a place where the bandwidth is poor. We mailed them hotspots. And Student Financial Services at MIT knows about the family income of every student. That's part of how we assess financial aid. And if Student Financial Services says that the student in question is in financial need, MIT is paying their cell phone bills. So that's how MIT is providing its students with bandwidth. We're sending out hotspots and paying their cell phone bills. I should also say that MIT has refunded its students the cost of the last part of this year in their housing and dining costs. And there are a fraction of our students at MIT, I won't try to guess that fraction, I'm not sure I know it, but there's a fraction of our students at MIT that pay no tuition and in fact do not pay for their housing and dining. Their family income is such that MIT gives them full financial aid, including all their tuition plus all their housing and all their dining. Those students got money back from MIT for housing and dining, even though they had not paid for it in the first place. So for those students, the ones in most financial need, MIT is helping them by giving them money to help them survive the next few months. So MIT is treating this as a crisis for its students as much as for the institution, and is trying to help its students in every way it possibly can. I'll also mention that we've introduced coaching. Starting, in fact, today, every MIT undergraduate will be getting a call from a coach who will stay in touch with them one-on-one for the next 6 weeks. These coaches, they might actually be coaches. Some of them are coaches of sports teams. They might be librarians. They might be staff from a department. They might be people in various offices at MIT who in normal times help students in a variety of ways. Every MIT student, every MIT undergrad and most graduate students will have a coach who calls them once a week and asks them, you can read the post that was put in the chat from that student, Abby H. Abby H will be getting a call from a coach who will help Abby H supportively as she navigates her journey through this pandemic. What's the major students' complaint? Well, we're going to hear that from the coaches starting next week. I don't think I can say what a major student's complaint is. I can tell you what I think they should say. They should say, and I don't know, we'll see what we hear back, but they should say, wow, that Professor DeLong, she did a great job. It was really engaging. Damn, that Professor Rajagopal was boring. He just droned on as if he was standing in a lecture theater and he didn't listen to us. He didn't, it was not interactive at all. And, he droned on for 50 minutes and I stopped paying attention after 10. They should be giving feedback like that. But there will also be plenty of other, we got one complaint already, which was faculty weren't stopping, right? Normally in a classroom setting, the end of the hour, you stop and the students leave and go to the next class. And apparently there were faculty who were just, trying to be engaging and interactive and went beyond the time. And that's not kosher because the student has another class in a different Zoom room. Anyway, that's a pretty trivial one and easy to message, which we have. Time zones. Should I take the time zones one? So this is one of the reasons why I think asynchronous learning materials are a really good component of what we should be doing. we are recommending to faculty, although not mandating, that they record their live Zoom sessions and post the recordings only for the use of the students in the class. So you all won't be able to see MIT live Zoom sessions, but the students in the class should. That's for the benefit of two populations. One is people in faraway time zones, and the other is people who have low bandwidth. If you have low bandwidth, it is often a good, helpful to download a video overnight and watch it the next day, as opposed to trying to stream it. Yeah, so teaching online is different. You tell, absolutely. How's that transition for professors? Depends who you ask. There were some who were very, very prepared for it because they've been thinking about this for 5 years in the context of blended learning, blending online tools with classroom experiences. There are others, I kid you not, there are other faculty who were asking, what's a browser? And so it had to go from what is a browser as the question that we were getting 2 weeks ago to teaching online. So there's a wide range. There are some faculty like me, my kids are 15 and 17. They're right now doing their online learning. They're in their rooms quietly doing their online learning. There are other faculty with kids who are 1 and 3 and 5 years old. There's a wide range. Karen Lee asked where the reading materials I sent are. I'll ask Kirky to reply to that. Oh, this is an interesting one. Do you think faculty, after this is all over, won't want to return to campus? Though, absolutely not. I can tell you. People would desperately love to get back and give their colleagues a hug. Come on. On the other hand, I would say that that's not the way you intended the question, I understand. I would say that as we go to the future, it will be a lot easier for teams of people, whether staff or faculty, to do things like working remote every Friday, because we will all have learned how to do it. So we'll see. I think practices like that will evolve. What advice given to students? We have a website called learnremote.mit.edu, and it was one of the links in what I intended to circulate to all of you last night. Okay, Joe Diaz. What sort of support can be offered to students face non-academic challenges? Well, so it depends on the degree. We have a robust office at MIT called Student Support Services for undergraduates, and another one called Grad Support for graduate students. And the coaches will be connecting students in need of the support that those offices provide with them, and they will be functioning remotely. So we will have lots of points of contact, but we can't re-engineer a family situation which is difficult, or a living situation which is difficult for a student who is remote, but we can give advice to the student either just via a good coach listening and helping the student to think things through, or more actively if more is needed. Okay, Kirky answered something. Any advice on preparing learning material? Well, if you really want to do this, you need more than 2 weeks preparation. I would say there's two. This is Yusuf Abushark asking. So one of the things that I passed out in the material that went out from Kirky yesterday, and you can all look at afterwards, it includes a video of my 10-minute remarks to the MIT department heads on March the 11th. And I think that's my advice. My advice is to see what the advice I gave to my colleagues was. And the most important part of that from me as the Dean for Digital Learning was, I'm not going to do it for you. So my message, you can see it, to the faculty through the department heads was, you have to make a plan. You have to take agency of how you are going to teach your course in this new way. You have to make a plan. Once you have a plan, we will support. And then of course, as we engaged with people, we help people think things through. That's of course true, but the worst thing you can do if you're in the central role here, institution-wide role, is to tell the faculty that we'll do it for you. Because they would jump at that, and then there's no way, because every faculty member is different, every discipline is different. And so the thing we pushed from March 11th is departments need to take a leadership role. And so many departments had point people in a department helping all the mechanical engineers think about it. that was actually a department that did this really well. My own department of physics did this well also. Have a core team within the department whom I was connecting to from the MIT side, but who they were connecting to their department staff. So delocalize it, push it out, empower individual faculty to take agency to make their own plans. That's my advice. The 15 workshops. That was Megan Purdue. Megan did 15 workshops all by herself. She was and is a dynamo and is an amazing Digital Learning Lab fellow. Should mention that one of the things we've done over the years, 5-6 years, is we have Digital Learning Lab fellows in many departments who connect to us, but who sit and work and are part of a department. Megan is the Digital Learning Lab fellow for a set of humanities and arts and social sciences departments at MIT. And she went around to all of them, I think in many cases more than once, and gave workshops. It's the same workshop over and over again. The slides for that workshop are posted publicly for the world on the community site. Kirky, that was also something I circulated. In the materials I circulated, there's a link to our Teach Remote site, which is centralized advice for all of our faculty on how to get started. There's our Learn Remote site, which is centralized advice to all of our students. It's relatively brief and not prescriptive. It includes advice to not do what I'm doing right now. I'm talking with you by sitting on my bed in my bedroom. You shouldn't do that if you're trying to study and learn. You should be sitting at a desk. It includes advice like that. And then there's our community forum where any of us can post materials that we found useful, and Megan's slides are posted there and you can all see them. Will this crisis change the mindset? Yes, it will. It will change everything. We're on a curve which is right now rising, the pandemic curve. It's rising everywhere, almost everywhere, not everywhere. Parts of China, it's already over the peak and flattened. I think there are good signs in the United States that it might be flattening in California and Washington, which were among the states in the United States whose rise started the earliest. Anyway, in Massachusetts, where I sit, we're on a rising curve. The projections are that the peak impact on our healthcare system, on our hospitals, will be sometime between April 10th and 20th in Massachusetts, if you believe the governor's projections. Then it will come to the other side. Where we come to on the other side will be a new normal. It won't be all of us will have lived through something that none of us ever lived through before. So it's going to change everything. The new normal, we will all have lived through this together. And so it will change, but I'm not going to try to predict how. Justin's mentioned that yes, if the way you do online learning is you just put stuff out there and you wait for students to engage with it, that I'm not sure how Justin described this, but I would say it disadvantages the disadvantaged. And that's why we've introduced coaching. Our coaches, we have now a new community of 600 people at MIT who are coaches for our students. Our coaches will reach out proactively to every student once a week. And in that way, they will discover those who need, whether maybe it's just quiet encouragement, maybe it's more, to ensure that they're catching up with online learning. How was your week last week? How did you do last week? Are you caught up on stuff? That's part of what the coaches will surface and help students to navigate. We are not using any AI tools for assessment or grading, at least not in any systematic way. There may be individual faculty who are, but MIT is not. How far into the term is MIT? We ended our in-class teaching on a Thursday. That was our last day of in-class teaching. There was Friday and then 1 week before spring break, and we lost those 6 teaching days. We're not trying to replace them. So we've shortened our semester by 6 teaching days, and that's what gave us the 2 weeks to prepare. Because we had that week, which we've canceled, and then spring break, which was always a break. So we started on March 30th with half the spring semester to go, which is about 7 in-class weeks followed by an exam week. So we have 7 weeks to go, 1/4 of the academic year, 1/2 the term. Graduation process. We are planning a virtual graduation ceremony, and I'm not in the planning for that, but there are people who are devoting a lot of energy to that planning, and I'm not looped in. Well, so students complain that remote learning takes up all of their time. We as faculty need to make sure that the time we're expecting of them is comparable to what we expect on campus at most, and I would hope a little less. So that's if Sylvia Schmelkes' comment, if that's coming from MIT students, we have to renormalize our expectations. One of the big messages I sent out to faculty from the beginning was, don't expect the learning goals that you usually do. Figure out what your learning goals are during the pandemic with remote learning, and it might only be 2/3 of what you normally expect. And that 2/3 mantra is something I've said many, many times. Okay, there's a longer question from Anialdo. Are you asking biggest transition for the teachers? Yes. Okay. So for the teachers, okay. So let me riff on that question a little bit. There are many classes at MIT that have the structure of lectures, recitations, problem sets, office hours. And that's a large bucket at MIT. For the recitations, for the office hours, those should be done with Zoom interactively by whoever's leading the recitation, whoever's doing the office hours. They are much more important now than usual because they give students a way of connecting that they should be taking more advantage of. Lectures, too many of them are being delivered just by Zoom. There are better ways, as I described. I discussed that. The next large bucket are seminar classes. Think about 15 students sitting around a table having a discussion. That's that style of class. For that, Zoom works well. You should use, the faculty who are doing that should learn how to use all the tools of Zoom, which were designed for that kind of a setting. Zoom works well if it's used well. It doesn't work well if you use it badly. But then, so there's 4 other categories at MIT, which I'm going to lump together. Lab classes. Okay, so think of students in a lab, mixing things with test tubes. Project classes. Think of students building robots that do crazy things. Design classes. Think of the architecture students in a design studio. And performance classes. Think of our theater arts students learning how to act, where they may be in normal times putting on a play together. Or think about our music students in a chamber music ensemble or playing together. That there are classes at MIT that are intrinsically about performance. So there's labs, there's design classes, project classes, performance classes. Those are the biggest challenges, those 4. And I think the hardest one of all is the performance classes. How can you do a symphony orchestra online? So my advice to faculty March 11th teaching those classes was, don't just give up. Don't say, we can't do this online. Of course you can't do it online the way you normally do. You can't mix chemicals in test tubes online. You can't do a symphony orchestra performance online. But take a step back, catch your breath, and ask, what are my learning goals? What are my goals for my students? What do I hope they learn from the class? I can't deliver those learning goals in the normal way, but is there a way to deliver 1/2 or 1/3 of those learning goals using these tools? And think about it that way. And very, very few classes have canceled. So if I give some examples, what each of these categories, lab classes are having their students do data analysis. They're having their students write papers. They're having their students give presentations about experiments. All of those can be done remotely. To quote one of my good friends in my own department, it's true you can't twiddle the knobs, but you can get most of the learning goals accomplished. That's from a physics professor who's an experimental physicist who loves twiddling the knobs, and who has done a magnificent job of preparing his students for remote learning in the major lab class in physics. Design classes, people are thinking about, computer-assisted design. People are thinking about building stuff using cardboard boxes in your home. There's a lot of creativity on the design side also. To me, the most impressive, though, is the music and theater arts department. Let me just praise them for a little bit. MIT is known for various things. You on the outside don't think of music and theater arts when you think of MIT, but you should. if you order our departments by number of students taught each semester, music and theater arts is our 5th largest department. It teaches more students than every department at MIT except for physics, math, mechanical engineering, and electrical engineering, computer science. It's our 5th biggest department in terms of how many students it teaches. When I first talked with that department head, he was like, "Ah!" And I'm pleased to report that they canceled nothing, okay? Including the symphony orchestra. For every one of their classes, including those that are performance-based, they have found a way to deliver a good experience to their students because they felt the symphony orchestra plays a community building role. That symphony orchestra is a community. So they've invented other symphony orchestra-based activities to keep that community together and to do an intellectual academic activity which will at the same time knit that community together, even though they won't be performing as a symphony orchestra. So every class in that department is continuing. And students will get grades. I should also say one of the most important decisions MIT made was to go to pass no record. There will be no A's, B's, and C's at MIT this semester. You can get a sense of why that is, just from what I've been saying. There will be enormous inequities of experience across our teaching effort. Some faculty are better prepared than others. Some faculty have young kids, others don't. Some faculty are going to get sick, others won't. And then there are enormous inequities of experience across our student community. So if I, as a professor, think that I can figure out that Sanjoy deserves only a C, while Kirky deserves an A, sorry, Sanjoy, I'm kidding myself. I'm kidding myself. Sanjay may have only done work that under normal terms earns him a C, but the reasons for why he only did that may be things that I would be deeply sympathetic to if only I knew. And the coach will know, but the professor might not. So there will be no A's, B's, or C's from MIT this year, only pass or no record. No record at MIT means nothing goes on the transcript at all. Assessments. I will talk about assessments. Let me just scan further. No grades. No grades, doesn't it make the students lazy? Well, we're going to have to find out. We're going to have to find out. I hope not. We talked about this at length. Normally we give out grades. There are good reasons for giving out grades in normal times, but I don't think giving out grades would have made any sense. We'll find out. Collaborative work. And I'll come back to exams. Collaborative work. Our students are staying in touch with each other. They're using all sorts of platforms. I think that we will, as coaches, the coaches will need to prompt those connections, but it should be fine to have students collaborating and staying in touch with each other. I think that's very important. I'm not actually that concerned about that. Exams, I am concerned about. So I'll give you the advice that I've given my faculty colleagues over the past week and a half. Look, we're in a pandemic. And we as an institution have decided we're not giving out A's, B's, and C's. Do you actually need final exams? Think about what is a final exam. Final exam is a high stress, high weight exercise that occurs on one specific day, maybe in one specific 3-hour period, or if you flex that a little bit, it's on one specific day. How do you know you won't be sick on that day? How do you know your students won't be sick on that day? How do you know your students won't be caring for a sick parent on that day? How do you know you won't be caring for a sick parent on that day? Are you sure you want to rest 30% of the weight of the question of whether the students pass or not on a one-day exercise? Given that we're doing pass no record grading, might it not make sense to rely upon the formative assessments that we do on a week-by-week basis, each one of which is lower stress and lower weight? You can call them quizzes, you can call them tests, you can call them problem sets, you can call them papers, whatever. The set of things that our students will already have done before the pandemic started and will do on a week-by-week basis. So we will have some classes with final exams, and that's fine. It's up to each individual faculty member. But I am steering faculty in the direction of thinking about other modes of pandemic assessment, just as we have pandemic grading, and just as we have pandemic teaching, and we have pandemic learning. Kirky, what have I missed? I've sort of scanned the chat. I may not have got everything.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. You addressed things they asked. You said in one of your earlier comments, the new normal in academics, and somebody asked you to please elaborate.
I wish I could. That means that needs a crystal ball. I don't think we know yet, and I am so in the moment that I don't trust myself to try to do that. I will say, so we at MIT are in the process of setting up 3 different kinds of planning activities. One is literally in the moment. So in fact, I will be part of all 3. There's a set of things that come in where a decision needs to be made today about something. And we've been living in that mode for the last month. So that involves, I'm speaking about remote teaching, but there are people who need to make decisions about all kinds of other questions. And we have a sort of somewhat loosely coordinated group of working groups that are working on the things that need to be handled in the moment. We then have what we're calling a 2020 planning group. 2020 means all the way from now till the end of December. MIT needs to make decisions about questions like what will be happening with all of its various summer programs. Those decisions need to be made relatively soon because the summer is not far away. MIT needs to make decisions about how it will be teaching in the fall. Those decisions don't need to be made yet, but they need to be made, probably within not that many weeks, maybe, a month or whatever, something like that. But we also need a thoughtful planning group. Okay, and so we're thinking of that as the 2021 group. This is informally, it'll be called something else. We need a group of people who are kind of strategic visionaries who can take a step back and ask the question, what is the new normal going to be and how should MIT prepare for it? And someone like me who has an important responsibility that's in the moment should be injecting doses of reality into those discussions, and that will be my role on the teaching and learning side. But I don't have the time or bandwidth right now to take that step back, and so we'll create a task force of people whose charge will be to take a step back and think about how MIT should be preparing for the longer term. That group hasn't been formed yet, but we will form such a group. And so, I guess I could start trying to speculate, but I'm so focused on what we need to do for the next 6 weeks that I'm not sure I would trust myself to be the most insightful in terms of speculating about the next 6 years. I will be part of that group, but I will be not leading it.
We had a follow-on question from how we're doing the new grading. And it says, pandemic assessment, will it be fair for students, particularly for their future?
Very good. So students are asking us that question. One of the things we're asking, we're talking with we have put, all of our graduate programs have put statements on their admission sites, which basically say, I'd have to find one to look at. I'm going to paraphrase. But basically say, look, we know that we're in a pandemic. We're all living through it. In our admissions processes for master's and PhD programs in the next 2 years, when we look at transcripts from this semester, we're not going to pay much attention at all because we know that everyone was in a pandemic. We will be doing our best to do a holistic assessment of all of the preparation and qualifications of each student. There are statements like that on many of our graduate program web pages. What I say to my own advisees, I have a group of students that I advise. What I say to them is, forget about A's, B's, and C's. No one's going to care. What you should look for, you should get a letter of reference from one of your professors, which says, in that semester when we had the pandemic, this student, I'm thinking of a particular person whom I've had this conversation with. I better not say her name. This student not only did a really amazing job of learning the material and mastering the material and impressed me thus and so, she also was magnificent in helping her peers. She helped so many students in my class through that semester. It was remarkable. I said, that's the letter that will get you into every PhD program or every medical school in the world. So try and get that letter. That's my message to our students. We have also been hearing, we don't have a medical school at MIT, but we've been hearing from medical schools that they're saying similar things. I don't know whether there will be a global statement from all 150 medical schools in the United States, but we're hearing from the medical schools that they don't want to be a source of stress on the students of today. They don't want students saying, oh my goodness, I need an A to get into medical school. Forget it. It's a pandemic. Don't worry about it. We got to live through this together.
Thank you. One last question, and it says, how are you planning for contingencies such as teachers, faculty getting sick?
Yeah, good. So messaging about that is going out to the MIT community today, in fact. And it's not just about teachers, it's it's business continuity also, every group. Basically, we're asking everyone to make plans now for the possibility that they may be for 2-3 weeks completely out of circulation, and during that 2-3 weeks they should focus entirely on rest, recuperation, recovery, their health. And so on the teaching side, within a department, faculty should be thinking, okay, I'm teaching 8044, who could take that over for a couple of weeks? And my colleague is teaching 804, well, I could take that over for a couple of weeks. Making plans like that within a department. The email asking our colleagues to start making those plans is going, in fact, it just went out. It went out about an hour ago. There will be an analogous email, which I haven't seen yet, going out to think of the JWell team, or think of the MITx team or the OpenCourseWare team, which I lead. I don't lead the JWell team, but each of those teams, everyone in those teams should have the same conversation. If I'm going to be, suppose I'm out for 2-3 weeks, what are the things that really have to be continued? Who would do them? What are the things that would just best, we put aside for 2-3 weeks? All of us should be making those plans within our teams, talking with our managers. As faculty, we should be making those plans within a department. That messaging just went out, so I can't speak about how people are making those plans, because we're just sending out the advice to do so today.
Thank you, Krishna. This has been a great discussion. If you have additional questions, please post them on the Rocket Chat on the JWell Connections website, and we will get back to you with answers if we can.
I would be happy to hear feedback somehow through the JWell channels we didn't have time for this, but from you and your universities about some of the things that you're doing. I would value that. So I'll ask Kirky to somehow synthesize that as you send it to her. I would also, will do my best to answer further questions as they come up. But let me end by saying thank you very much for participating in JWell. I think this is obviously not the topic I would have liked to have discussed with you, but I hope sharing some of the in-the-moment experiences of this past month here at MIT is of value to you. I look forward to the opportunity to doing this again in future, when we can talk about blended learning and how it has improved the education of physics students at MIT over the past 20 years, which is what I was hoping to talk about. But that will be for another time, and I thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you.